Good morning, Bill. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Robin. I'm well. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Another week, another incident. Let's just get straight into it. Let's not do any of the padding or the pomp or pageantry, and let's go straight to talk about passwords and the importance of keeping passwords close to your chest. Do you use a password manager by any chance?
I do use a password manager, Robin, and my password manager in particular is something that I keep local. I know there's a lot of cloud based password managers available, but I don't mind putting in the extra work to keep it local, keep it secured, and replicate as I need it.
Are you a YubiKey guy, or do you prefer something different?
I've been looking into that. So part of the, if we want to call it a struggle that I have with those keys, is that it is something that you have, but it's also managing something that you have and making sure that you don't lose it, or do you have multiple copies? So yeah, I'm kind of still working my mind through that. How about you? Do you use YubiKey at all?
I do. Unfortunately, I have multiple YubiKeys. And I've
Yes.
also lost a few YubiKeys as well, which is kind of my own fault. I should have kept it somewhere safe, like next to my password book and somewhere similar. But the YubiKeys are good. And I noticed that
They are.
companies like Google are really pushing their save password feature now on tools like Chrome, where
Yes, they are.
there was this one advert where somebody was trying to book show tickets. They didn't book in time. And Chrome said, oh, well, you should have just saved all your credit card info with us and have things auto-filled.
The slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. Now, that's the price you pay for convenience.
That's right.
Now, for the folks out there who have been using LastPass, I understand that their parent company, GoTo, have had a little bit of an announcement this week. What's happened?
That's right. Well, Robin, I tell you, this is a tough one to talk about because LastPass users using that online password repository have been beleaguered recently with news of breaches and so forth. Now, LastPass's parent company, as you mentioned, is GoTo. And back in November of 2022, GoTo had a breach. Well, a little bit earlier this week, GoTo revealed some details about that November 2022 breach. And the details were a little bit ugly. So apparently, what was exfiltrated from the company were not only some backups and some usernames and hashed passwords, MFA settings. I mean, the list goes on, including even licensing information. But very of large concern is that in addition to those backups, the threat actors were able to exfiltrate the encryption keys that encrypt those backups. So, folks that use, the GoTo suite, including what we're referred to as the Log Me In suite, right? Log Me In Central and Pro, Join.me, Hamachi, Remotely Anywhere, all of those things are potentially affected by this.
So just a small breach then. It's just the double-edged sword. You use tools like LastPass because you don't want to have to worry about 64-bit hexadecimal passwords everywhere. But by putting all of your eggs in that password bucket, poor data handling or poor security policies internal to the organization has done potentially unsurmountable damage.
I love that you covered both parts of that, Robin, because you said, not only protecting the data, but also data management policy. This particular case, both of them were violated. Not only was the data exfiltrated, but these encryption keys that were utilized to protect the data were literally stored with the encrypted data. That is a huge policy breakdown, Robin. You really, as a best practice, should never hang your key on the doorknob of your front door. It doesn't make sense to do that, but that's actually in effect what happened here. And when we were informed or reassured, I'm not sure what kind of a reassurance this was, but GoTo reassured us that key only unlocks a portion. Now, is a portion 20%? Is it 90%? They've not said.
Well, I broke into your house and only stole a portion of your things. How do you feel about that? It's
Yeah, depends on which portions, Robin.
Exactly. And you won't really know the full extent of the breach until it's far too late, until you have JP Morgan Chase saying, hey, you've got 5 open credit accounts on your name. Where did that come from?
Right.
So unless you really know the full scope, and I presume that GoTo aren't fully aware of the entire scope, that's going to be a very difficult situation to be in.
You're right about that, Robin. They are not fully aware of the scope. In fact, first of all, they haven't released any information about how this was achieved by the threat actor. That's number one. Although we do know that some additional data was breached by those threat actors, compromising the end user, right? So they were able to reach out and talk to a person and get even more. But what GoTo has done is they have called in a third party to investigate it because, again, they just don't have the line of sight and they need help.
They do, and we all need help as security incidents become bigger and badder and bolder. So I would presume to mitigate this sort of incident, as you don't know the full extent of how data was exfiltrated, you'd start by looking at, say, malicious IPs, unexpected activity on your network. Are there anything else that you should really look at to try and understand how the breach happened?
We talk about indicators of compromise. We talk about things like signatures, but nothing can substitute. Well, it's hard to substitute for understanding behaviors. And with this kind of a breach where we're really not sure the specific mechanisms that were utilized, an intrusion prevention system that is aware of things like suspicious activity. In this particular instance, I think that if there was an IPS that was capable of monitoring things like bandwidth anomalies, we're talking about exfiltration of backups. Robin, those aren't small. That's a pretty significant chunk of data that is suddenly moving out of the network. And if your intrusion prevention system is aware of bandwidth anomalies, behaviors that look suspicious, and are able to alert you, although the horses have begun to come out of the proverbial gate, at least you would be able to mitigate that and catch as much as possible before it all got out. So yeah, you really need to look at it from that perspective. There are data sources that can be monitored. Of course, there are, signatures, hallmarks of indicators of compromise. It's that behavior that makes an absolutely huge difference. We need to be able to see that.
I mean, that's being able to see is a huge challenge in the IT space, which is why the observability market is booming currently. And if you're not monitoring all points of egress of your network, then how do you know that backups are being leaked? In the past, I've worked with visibility vendors. I sold visibility tools for quite some time and said, hey, this is why digital experience monitoring is important. But if you don't have a full understanding, you can't identify the anomalous behavior. You can't identify the suspicious activity because how do you baseline? How do you trend? How do you know that traffic moving from point A to point B is not a scheduled Veritas backup? Or other vendors are out there. So being able to have a platform that can view the entire network and application traffic, as well as make that holistic or heuristic definition that something is suspicious, that's where it's really key. But getting there can be very challenging.
Yes. So, and further to that, Robin, it's not only that visibility, it's not only having tools that will enable you to see those things that are taking place, but we have to circle back again and say policy. My goodness me, here we are. And we've seen this kind of thing happen in repositories such as GitHub, where you've got code that's being developed and then you've got API keys that are sitting right next to it that, allow threat actors to very easily compromise what they're looking to accomplish. So we really have to look at it from multiple angles. It is about tools. It is about baselining. It is about analytics, but none of that matters if you are not spending the time to be wise about the policies that you set for your organization. That really is absolutely essential.
Yes. If somebody steals your data, you can try and think of, how could have I prevented it? Or how could we check our cameras to make sure? But at the end of the day, if you are leaving your key hanging on the door, maybe you should start to reassess where you put your keys. If you go back to the 1980s, a fake rock, putting a key in a fake rock in a plant pot outside your front door, sure, that was fine. That was acceptable. But now everybody knows that when you need to find different places to put your keys.
That's right.
Now, just to close that loop, if you are worried about this on your organization, the Cato Network's IPS does offer SAM, which stands for, Sam, can you remember?
Are you talking about system activity monitoring?
Oh, close.
Suspicious
Activity monitoring. Ooh, acronym bingo.
Yeah,
So it does
absolutely.
include that. So we could detect, we could identify, we could prevent this sort of thing from happening. Or if not prevention, because people can be sneaky, we can still provide the indicators of traffic. You have that auditing, you have that logging, and you have that reporting. So you can be protected with Cato. So on the topic, sorry, I'm going to diverge into a slightly different topic. We're talking about reporting. We're talking about data privacy. So let's talk about another big issue that has cropped up this week. GDPR and WhatsApp. Ooh, Meta's in the news again. What's been happening?
So you're right, in the news again, and that's a little bit of a pattern here. We've also got a little bit of a pattern in this WhatsApp story. So the essence of the story is that the Irish Data Protection Commission, which is kind of an overseeing organization that takes a look at data usage, has, under the GDPR, has issued a 5.5 million euro penalty against WhatsApp. Now, if anybody's wondering how the IDP can do that, WhatsApp is actually headquartered in Dublin. But they issued a penalty for violating the terms of GDPR. For those who aren't aware, GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation. And the reason that they issued this is that I think everybody is aware that uses WhatsApp that they've made a lot of hay out of the fact that chats are end-to-end encrypted. Here we go again, Robin, with encryption. So chats are end-to-end encrypted. But back in 2018, when GDPR was going into enforcement, WhatsApp issued an updated license to their users that their users were forced to accept if they were to continue utilizing WhatsApp. And in the terms of this agreement, the user, maybe knowingly, maybe unknowingly, Robin, I don't know how much you read your license agreements. I know I could do a heck of a better job at that.
End to end. Even the iTunes agreement saying you can't use this for nuclear, biological warfare. If you can do that with iTunes, then, fair play. Hats off to you. That's impressive.
That's what makes you such an interesting person, Robin, is that you're able to read all those licensing agreements and can probably spout them at will. But in the terms that they were presented, that the users were presented by WhatsApp, there was a significant portion of their data that they needed to leave unencrypted, and it was personal information. So in metadata about who they're chatting with, who they are, so on and so forth. And finally, the IDP came down on WhatsApp and said, listen, just because the chats are encrypted, you are still subject to GDPR, and this is a violation. Now, this may be a matter of opinion, Robin, but I think in a way, WhatsApp is fortunate here. And I know WhatsApp can probably afford the 5.5 million euros, but keep in mind that under the terms of GDPR, a fine can be levied up to 20 million euros for violations. So in a way, I think they got off lucky. I think the unlucky part is that WhatsApp now must comply with GDPR regulations within 6 months. So they've got 6 months to fix this. That's not a lot of time.
That's not a lot. And when you consider the back-end infrastructure required to make WhatsApp run, the amount of processes required internally to align everything, that's a little scary. 6 months is, well, a blink of the eye. If you work for one of the big four, such as KPMG, 6 months, that's the standard billing cycle equivalent to 1 day. So fingers crossed, see how that gets better.
That's right.
So how could I secure GDPR, or how could I become GDPR compliant using, I don't know, a SASE-based tool?
It's a great question. And I'd like to think that by now everybody sort of understands when GDPR applies. Let's keep in mind, though, for those that aren't aware, if you do business with residents of the European Union, then you are subject to GDPR regulations. So, I think of countries, that, if a business operates and they say we only operate in India, that really isn't sufficient, because if they do touch residents of the European Union, they are automatically subject to GDPR regulations. So what can we do to help stay in compliance? Well, as we discussed in the previous topic, Robin, policy is absolutely key. But data breaches can happen multiple ways, not only from threat actors, but sometimes it's internal folks who may accidentally leak that data and put us in violation. And the way that you can help mitigate that is with a robust and customizable data loss prevention. That will enable you to catch those that data before it gets out of the gate, that accidental exposure, which would then lead to GDPR violations. So the data loss prevention strategy needs to be aware of industry regulations. We need to be able to access that information very, very easily as we build policy, but we also need to be able to customize it based on the needs of our organizations. That is positively necessary in order to help you comply with these sorts of regulations.
Well, within a few clicks, Cato can help keep you protected and secured.
True indeed.
Oh, I'm on the upsell today. I'm on the upsell.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So we have LastPass, we have WhatsApp, and I wonder what's going to happen over the next week. So let's keep today's episode short, Bill. Thank you for your time and stay safe out there.
Sounds great. Take care, Robin. Good to talk to you.